Should you pay a $100 red light camera ticket in the city of St. Louis? Last week, St. Louis Circuit Court Judge Mark Neill officially struck down St. Louis's red light camera ordinance, calling it unconstitutional. Here's the odd part. The city councilor, Patti Hageman, says it will, her office will continue to enforce the ordinance, even though it's been declared unconstitutional. Attorney Chet Pleban, no fan of the red light camera, as he said in the past, joins us. What is a citizen to do now? I'm just a regular guy going through the city, and it flashed.
Well, and of course, here's what happens, and here's the rub on all this. Hageman says that she's going to enforce it on behalf of the city. So while the case is pending in the Court of Appeals, because they've appealed Judge Neill's ruling,
court, sure.
Yeah, and so the Court of Appeals ultimately is going to decide whether Judge Neill is right or whether he's wrong under the circumstances. Well, if you go in and you get that red light camera for the next year, probably while this case is pending, by the time you do the briefing and all that sort of stuff, and you come back and let's say the Court of Appeals says, Judge Neill is correct that law, that ordinance is unconstitutional, yet they've collected all these $100 fines. If you have paid that $100 fine, then you're out of luck. It doesn't matter what the Court of Appeals decides, because there's a thing called the voluntary payment doctrine.
I heard about
and
that.
So if you come in and you say, all right, here's my $100, I'm going to pay it and be done with it, you can't come back later on and collect it. You've got to pay it under protest. You've got to object to the payment in some form or fashion.
And then you may get the money back?
Then if it's still declared unconstitutional through the appellate courts, you can come back and say, I paid that involuntarily under the circumstances, and so therefore I want my $100 back.
Would they say, include a self-addressed envelope to get it back? Or, I mean, how are they going to pay for all that? Should that happen?
I don't know. You would think that maybe at this stage, and this, I guess, highlights the whole concept that this is a money grab. You would think that after one court now has said this is unconstitutional for a couple of different reasons, that they'd back off that. They'd wait and they'd say, okay, we're not going to enforce this, which, by the way, the majority of those things, I think, are right turns on red. You didn't come to a complete stop. You would think that they would delay trying to enforce that until you give the appellate court a chance to rule, rather than putting the burden on people to pay your $100 under protest or however you do it, and then come back and try to make the claim later on.
All right, let's say the appellate court says, okay, we agree with Judge Neill. What happens with the other municipalities?
Well, this is unique only to the
St. Louis,
the city of St. Louis.
Right.
But my argument has always been, if I get a ticket from a police officer who witnesses me violating that red light, and I go in and I plead guilty to that offense, that's a moving violation, I get 2 points for that offense. On the other hand, if I get a red light ticket and I go in, but I pled guilty, I've pled guilty to violating the red electric signal, just as the guy did who was seen by the police officer, I get no points. Now, you explain to me what the difference is between pleading guilty under circumstances where it's witnessed by a police officer and pleading guilty when it's a red light camera. Both you're admitting to a moving violation. In one you get the 2 points, in the other you don't.
All right, so we're out of time, but if Randy gets one of these red light cameras in the city, are you telling her to pay it or not?
I'm telling her to go to court, fight it.
Okay, there you go, Randy.